Hi, I'm Jeff Sweet. A number of years ago, a friend of mine, a wonderful playwright, did a stage adaptation of a novel, and I went to see the opening night. And one of the things that you do on opening night of a friend's play is if they ask you how you like it, you say, terrific, I had a great time. This is one of your responsibilities if you go to a friend's opening night. Your responsibility is to not crap up somebody else's opening night. So I went to see the opening night of my friend's show, and in the main, I liked it very much. So when I saw her at the party afterwards, I could say that honestly. And then I went off and drank the punch and talked to the other guests. Anyway, a few days later, she calls me and she says, okay, a few days have gone by. You did the obligatory thing really well, and I appreciate your support. But the play is going to be produced again pretty soon, and I want to be able to make any adjustments that I can to improve the play. And I know that you're never short of opinions, which is true. Okay, so she says, so if you have an opinion, if you have any thoughts on how I could improve the play, please, I'm asking you to give me some honest feedback. I said, okay, well, you adapted from this novel. You adapted this from a novel that was written in the past tense. And you use narration from the novel, and that narration is also in the past tense. And I say, I think you will find that it will work better if you take those past tense passages and you kick them into the present tense. And she says, that's your note. I say, yeah, that's my note. She says, oh, okay. I could tell that she was not real impressed by my, not engaging anything like structure or character or theme, all those things that she worked really hard on. But honestly, I thought she had all that pretty well in hand. All right, so the phone call is over, and then a few days later, she calls again, and she says, I've done it. She says, I've changed the tense of all the past tense narration to the present, and it's turned out to be the single most useful note I've ever gotten. It really changes the energy level on the stage. In my last video piece, I mentioned that Thornton Wilder had something to say about this. It was in an article called Some Thoughts on Playwriting. I found this in a 1941 book, a collection edited by Toby Cole, C-O-L-E, called Playwrights on Playwriting. And in it, Wilder wrote, a play visibly represents pure existing. A novel is what one mind claiming to have omniscience asserts to have existed. That is to say, a play is about now, and a novel is about then. Why is it important that what happens on stage happens now? Well, we're watching the stage to see what characters are going to do next. That's really where our attention is focused. What are these people going to do next? We aren't sitting terribly curious, particularly at the beginning of a play, about what they did in the past. There's no tension in the past. The past is over. Whatever decision was faced in the past has been decided. So whenever you use the past tense, I find the audience tends to be less compelled. They know that there's no urgency. I'm not saying that there aren't some great passages in the past tense. Certainly the speeches in the fourth act of O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night are tremendous speeches, particularly the father's. And yes, it's in the past tense. And the mother's speech at the end of Broadway Bound, the Statue of Liberty speech by Neil Simon, that's one of the best passages you can find in his work. But those past tense passages come late in those plays, at a point at which the writer has earned our trust and our interest in those characters and their past. Okay, so what can you do if you have to have a character who has to describe something that took place in the past? This is when I find something called the historical present is awfully useful. The historical present is something that you use all the time. Let's say that you're talking about something that happened to you yesterday, and as you're talking about it, and as you get more emotionally invested in the story, frequently you will slip into the present tense, especially if it's something that you're agitated about. Instead of you describing what happened yesterday, you begin to re-experience it and to narrate it as you re-experience it. It has more urgency. In fact, I read somewhere that when cops are trying to get witnesses to give them what they need, they make a practice of switching to the present tense. So cop will say, so when you see the suspicious car pull up in front of the bank, do you happen to notice what state the license plate is when they get out of the car? Do you notice how tall they are? What's the color of their hair? Do they all have hair? Apparently, getting witnesses to think in the present tense results in more vivid details and, in fact, in more details. So let me show you how this works. Here's a little passage I whipped up to illustrate. Yesterday, I was walking down the street, and I look across the street, and suddenly I see this guy. He's got a scar on the side of his face that looks like the map of Italy. And I know him from someplace, and suddenly it occurs to me, America's Most Wanted. And as I'm looking at him, he looks at me. Our eyes lock. I can tell, he can tell that I recognize him. And I start to pick up my pace. He crosses the street. He's behind me. I begin to move more quickly. He picks up his pace. I make a quick left, and suddenly I find that I'm in an alley that leads to a brick wall, and there's no escape. I turn around, and the shadow of the top of his head touches my toes. All right. Obviously, I'm here and alive to tell the story, so I survived whatever it was. But I don't know if you noticed, I started off that bit with the first line in the past tense. I said, yesterday I was walking down the street. And that's the only line in that speech that was in the past tense, because I instantly switched to narrating in the present. You know, it's something that happened yesterday because I've set that up, but by switching to the present, I'm able to generate more suspense than I would have generated if I'd stayed in the past tense. In my next video, I talk about how to get an idea across without actually saying it.